All right, shoot. I was just about to grab a piece of candy, and then I was like, "Oh, it's count. I'm too close on the countdown. I can't, I can't be eating candy when this."
Sure, you can.
But
Yeah.
I will share. It's
Uh,
not just any candy. I
What?
got this on my road trip back. These are butter toffee pecans.
oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, Charlena, Steve. We'll do our intros, but she is a she's a foodie, but like not really to eat it. She just likes to make it pretty and make it taste delicious. But she eats like a bird.
Okay. All right.
Excellent cook, though. All right. Welcome to the Rebirth Experience with Coach K. Charlena Anita is here, and we also have a really special guest. Um, and I'm so excited for this conversation. You know what, Steve? I have no intro. So you can introduce yourself however you want to do that. But I will say that I don't know how long we were Facebook friends, Steve. It was a long
Long time ago. Yeah. That was pre-cancer, in fact.
and it was
And
a couple years before because didn't
yes.
Doug have it before? Okay,
Yes.
yeah.
It was pre-cancer, and then I moved. I don't know if I was in Oregon by then or not.
No, you were out west for sure.
Okay, so I
So
was in Oregon by then. So I moved to Oregon in 2012 after I retired from the state. So you know I would work for the state of Alabama.
see, now you're doing your intro. So I'll just go.
I was I was a patient advocate, patient rights advocate for about 20 years for the Alabama Department of Mental Health. I worked with them for 26 years. The first 4 years or so, 4 or 5 years, I was a caseworker slash whatever, because I have a BA in psychology. Then I switched to advocacy and did that for 20 some odd years. And with Alabama, you can retire, or at the time, you could retire with full benefits after 25 years of service, regardless of your age. So I retired at 52, and I've
I
been retired ever
I'm
since.
not retired, so I'm jealous.
So I've been retired for forever, it seems like. Yeah.
Oh, well, I want to get into that, and I want to give Charlena some airtime as well. We haven't been here for a while, y'all. It's
Okay.
summertime, because it's been a couple weeks. Summertime things have been going on, and so I'm so happy we've been able to get back together. I know you just came back from a trip, Charlena.
Mhm.
Where'd you go? Tell everybody where you went.
So this month has been really full. Let's see, week before last, we were in Jamaica for a week. And then we were home for Sunday, Monday, 3 days. And then we left for Portugal. And we just got back last night, 8:30.
Wow,
So
wow.
Wow.
we got to sit down for a few weeks, just a few weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I'm planning to be in Atlanta in the weekend of the 25th of this month.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll look at my calendar. Well, I have not been around the world, but I have been around the woods. I've been I've been around the woods camping out. Um I don't know where this hobby came from, but I could talk about it all day. And so I actually have to measure myself so I don't go on and on about it. You know how when you get hot about something, it could be the nerdiest thing, but
Mhm.
you could
You
just
know
talk
that
it into the ground. Yeah. So which you should only do when you're with other people
people
who
that
also
have
have
the
that.
interest.
You know what I'm saying? But I will say it just gives you new perspective on things. There's something so healing about being in nature. I feel so accomplished and empowered. I'm doing these hikes and even just surviving out in the woods. It's just a interest I always had, but I didn't really picture myself that way. And I definitely had become very dependent at one point on a spouse. There was just things I could have done for myself that I didn't do, and being out in the woods and surviving and like cooking food in the open, it just makes me feel strong. I don't know how to explain it, but it's been a really great experience. And we were on the beach this time, so
So
that
I just had a thought. So don't you think sometimes, like if you're married and you have a particular interest and your spouse doesn't have that interest, it can sometimes hinder you from fully experiencing that interest because you might think that it's something that you should be doing together, or you might possibly think that, oh, what is it going to look like me going on all these solo trips on my own? And so sometimes we just don't explore things that may really be important to us because it's not an interest that our spouse has. And sometimes things are looked at in a negative way if you do certain things solo.
Okay, so listen, let's let Steve introduce himself. And
Yeah,
I want you, then I want Steve to answer
that's
that
how it goes.
question.
We'll like be talking about something.
I
and then
know,
we'll
Steve.
kinda-
Welcome
Yeah.
to the
That's
female
fine.
brain.
We
That's what
we
it
can
is.
That's how
I don't mind meandering. We can meander. That's fine.
Okay. Yeah. Women,
Introduce yourself, and then you can answer that loaded question.
Yeah, I don't know what else to say other than I'm retired, cancer survivor, career in mental health, father of 3. Yeah.
Well, we're going to get into it
Okay.
after this question because I really want you to tell your cancer story. The only thing I'll add is that, as a way of introducing Steve, my memory is fuzzy, Steve. It's probably too many happy flowers over the years, if I'm honest. But I don't remember exactly when we met online, or I think we met through some other mutual people, and then that's how you got cool with Doug, who I went to Andrews with. Steve also has a Seventh-day Adventist background, like we do. Charlena knows a lot of people from Oakwood, a lot of the same people. Charlena also is a former SDA, and so we've there's
Okay. So
different things we could talk about.
we're Adventist adjacent. That's what we are now.
Oh, is that the term? Okay.
Yeah.
I'll take that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, but Steve, I thought was there a time on Facebook where we were like misunderstanding each other or not really liking each
Yes.
other?
Yes. There was a time.
I
Yeah.
thought so.
You said something. You were something that you were. Well, back in my arrogant days, pre-cancer, where I knew everything, of course. You said something. I was like, "That's just ditzy" or something like that, and I posted it on my page, and then that we were estranged for a while. That's what happened.
That's right. But you know what the truth is? I was in such a toxic place in my life back then. It probably was a ditzy statement. Sometimes on social media, especially back then, you'd just be talking to be talking. People
Yeah. So that's what happened. But then we reconnected. So, and we're in different places now. I mean, I think we're in much healthier places at this point. So yeah.
Steve, you and Cara had a breakup too. We had a breakup.
Yeah, we did.
Why do I have all these breakups?
It was probably best at the time, truth be told, so yeah. Because now she is different than what I remember from then. And I'm different from what I remember then too. So it's all good.
And you're different from what I remember. So, and see, that's why I said there's 17 different lanes here, because people can change. And so that's why when you see people that are in the public eye and someone says, oh, back in 2005, well, what if people judged you based on who you were in 2005?
Right.
Now, some people are the same, but we have to give room for change.
Exactly. I agree.
Okay, so to the question. So again, Charlena, you were saying, which I thought was so fascinating, because I think I'd shared with you about a guy I know who got married for the first time late in his life. And he was so resentful that it changed all of his friendships and activities and relationships with other people. Because he said that people he'd been close with for years stopped contacting him because they're like, oh, you're married now. So, and I think that's like adjacent to your question about having a hobby. You said something about having a hobby. Your spouse is not interested in that hobby.
So I think, let me qualify it by saying, if both people are mature and allow space for growth, it won't be a problem. If they're not, if they got some unresolved whatever, there's going to be a problem. And there's going to be resentment on both sides. And unfortunately, Once the resentment starts, then the relationship ends.
Ooh, did you hear that last sentence, Charlena?
That's an interesting perspective.
Because
I
and when I
just
say
can't
that is because
yeah,
people aren't honest enough to express the resentment part. And so it festers. That's the problem. If they could get that out and talk about it, that's a whole different thing, but they won't. And so now they're keeping score in their head. And it just multiplies until eventually what breaks, I mean, it's been broken, but finally they get to a point where it's enough and then they go on their separate ways. But I think, so here's the problem. And M. Scott Peck in his book, I think it was People of the Lie, maybe. Anyway, he said it takes about 10 to 15 years for people to really start to love their partner. And it takes that long because the first few years, people are trying to recreate their partner into a version of themselves.
I'll explain that a little more.
So it's not like, so we may be attracted to the person because of their personality and all the other stuff that we think is unique, right? But then once we get together, we're trying to recreate them to be like us. We want them to like the stuff we want, like the stuff we like, eat the stuff we eat, do the stuff we do, so forth and so on, as opposed to understanding that they're independent and they have their own interests and that kind of thing. But because we're insecure, we want them to be like us. So that's the problem.
So I'm going to go back to the resentment, and you talked about people being able to talk about that. How does someone, because I think first you have to be able to identify that. I think that a person may be feeling these feelings and not be able to identify them for what they are. And I think that's why it's important to have good communication with your partner. Or first of all, be self-aware, right? To be able to identify you're feeling something. You may not even be able to put the label of resentment on it, but just to be able to talk to your partner, because I think you're right. I mean, you went to the extreme of, it's the end of your relationship. I think that resentment plants the seeds of what leads to the end of your relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so let's talk about the genesis where it starts from. I think it starts from the nonverbal or the expectations that are never told, that are never said out loud.
Mm-hmm.
It starts there.
Mm-hmm.
And so, for example, if I marry you and I in my head expect you to be
Right.
the homemaker, to cook 3 meals a day and so forth and so on, right? Say that's expectation.
Mm-hmm.
But we've never talked about that.
Mm-hmm.
So now every time that you don't cook 3 meals a day, how am I going to feel? I'm going to feel like you've let me down,
Mm-hmm.
even though we've never talked about what I think I want you to do.
Mm-hmm.
Or vice versa. You marry me and you expect me to be the provider and the protector. And I don't have a job, or I make less than you, and I'm not able to quote unquote provide or do the things that we like to do, that we say we like to do. How then do we talk about those things? And the problem is, yes, we have to be aware, but we also have to be aware of those expectations that we're not talking about, that exist in that relationship, that we're now judging this person about, that they have no idea.
Mm-hmm.
Man, listen, I
completely agree. And I think as you share, I mean, that's where maturity comes in. Maturity.
Right. That's why I qualified it with that. But mature folks don't have, because they can talk about those things.
Mm-hmm.
They can talk about the expectations. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
But most people enter into relationships never talking about what they expect.
But you know what, Steve? And the other part of that for me is, and I would hope this comes with maturity, we have to stop trying to control the other person just
Well, that
because
goes back to recreating them to be like us, or
exactly.
a version of what we think they should be. Yeah.
Exactly, because what everybody wants on the opposite side of that is to be accepted as they are.
Right.
That's like the
Right.
hope and dream that you're going
Right.
to show up in front of someone, warts and all. They look at you from head to toe, inside and out, and say, that's what
Right.
everybody wants, but they don't want to give it to other people.
Right.
And I think that,
Well, it
yeah,
makes it easier. It makes it easier if your partner is like you. If your
Yeah.
partner, it makes it easier for you if your partner is either like you or if they're the way you want them to be. It makes it easier. And you don't have to do the work that comes from being with someone who's different from you.
Right.
There's work
So
that has to be
there's
done.
something to be said to be with a person who has a lot of common interests. I think that's why that's important, because then that will smooth over those rough spots that you inevitably will have,
Mhm.
because you have those things in common. It's much harder when you don't have things in common. In my first marriage, we were both Adventists. She comes from a very conservative Adventist family, and I'm on the opposite end. So then we're both Adventists, but we're nothing alike. We have nothing in common,
Mhm.
because even our practice of religion is going to look different. You see what I'm saying? She's coming from the old school where, for example, kids didn't play on Sabbath, they didn't do, you know what I'm saying? And I'm taking my kids to the park. We're
Okay.
having fun.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? And so now
Say
look
that.
at
How you keep us.
right, right.
Mhm.
and
And
you know
then
what?
and
Raising kids together is a whole nother, like,
dynamic.
yeah,
Yes.
I would never want
Yes.
to do that again.
Yes.
That's when a lot of the differences, I think, come out even more for a couple when they're
Yeah.
raising children and they don't necessarily have shared values. Whose
Right.
whose
Right.
values are gonna win?
And so, and then enter into that is people, when they're compromising, they don't really compromise. What they really do is they try to make it transactional. So say you and I are doing something, I give in this time thinking that you're going to give in next time to me. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But
But you
then when
didn't
that
say
doesn't
that.
happen, then I'm getting resentful because I feel like I'm always giving and you're not. You see what I'm saying? So there's so many avenues where the resentment can get in, and then grow from that.
So let me ask you this, because I'm a bit of an addict to some of these relationship shows. Not like The Bachelor, where all these people are vying for one
Go
person,
ahead and
but
say that. Your love after lockup. You like that one. You
I,
like that
I
one.
did. I watched
Yeah.
a lot of that. I watched a lot of
I
that.
gotta find that show so I
I've
can
watched
check that
about 5 or 6 seasons of that. It's crazy. I mean,
out.
yeah.
And you know what you learn from that is there's the truth and then there's the delusion that people
Right.
tend to tell themselves. And
Very
not
true.
that show, but there's another show. I can't remember what it is. You'll see the couple talking to each other and they're having a breakdown, an argument or whatever. And then when they get in the confessional, they say it straight up. They're like, I just feel like I'm not heard, or they didn't say that to the person.
Right.
And
Right.
and so and I
Mhm.
wonder, or especially on the Love After Lockup, since you brought that up, people will have these massive secrets and they didn't tell the other person anything, or it happened. It actually, the 90 Day Fiance show is famous for this. They
Right.
bring
Right.
someone all the way to another country without
Mhm.
telling them what they really want. And there was one where it
Right.
was an
Or what
Indian
they really
guy,
have or
yeah,
don't
or what
have,
they had. So there was an Indian guy, and the fiance was white, and
and
she was
older.
coming over there. No, she was
Yes.
young. They were the same age. But he
Okay.
said
Okay.
flat out to the camera, she's going to have to cook for me every day and my family, but I'm
Right. I
not
remember that
telling
one.
her
Yes.
until
Yes.
after we get
Mhm.
married.
Right.
He said
Right.
it
I remember
flat
that.
out. And
Yeah.
and and so people, it's fear based. If I tell them everything, if they see
All right.
everything about me now, they're not
Okay.
going to want me. They're not going to want this. So I'm going to trap them first. And,
Right.
and men and women do this. I'm going to trap them
Yeah.
first,
Yeah.
and then we'll work it out because we can get through anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's but people are scared to tell the truth. They want to talk about hashtag best friend. I married my best friend, but then they're keeping all these secrets.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the reason is there was a book that came out in the 70s that says that was entitled Why I'm Afraid to Tell You Who I Am. And the bottom line is we're afraid to tell because we don't want to be rejected.
Yeah.
And so we would rather create this facade so that when the facade is rejected, they're not rejecting me, they're rejecting this representative that I've created.
Exactly. Or
Which is not healthy,
they
but I
want
mean
you to
that's what
fall in
some
love
people
first.
do. Yeah.
That's the thing. It used to be. It's like, I want this person to fall in love with me first, because then the emotions will outweigh the logic of
Right,
what's
right,
going on.
right.
And there's another show, Steve. Did you watch Never Ever Mets?
No, I don't think I've seen
Okay,
that one.
Charlena, you really need to watch this one. I
What is
can't
it
remember
called?
what streaming service it's on. Never Ever Mets. It sounds weird, but that's
Okay.
how you say it. But
Okay.
basically, these are people. Actually, it's like Steve and I. We're a great example. Never ever, except that we're not dating. But it Never Ever Mets. It's people who met online and started dating, got into some sort of full blown relationship, but either months or years went by and they still haven't met in person. So they met for the first time all on this reality show. It's like 7 couples, and you just watch them navigate what's the difference now in real life versus online.
Right,
And there were
right.
people on there who had babies and hadn't told the other person.
They had babies.
One woman had a 1-month-old, and he was like, I wondered why she didn't look the same on FaceTime or whatever. And so when she confessed that, she confessed she had a kid, he was like, well, that makes me feel better because I have a secret too. I have a kid. I got a baby too. His
Wow.
baby was 6 months old. Her baby was 1 month old. And then she was like, well, but I have to tell you that I actually have 2 other children.
See,
So in
that's
all this
crazy.
time he'd been
Yeah.
dating her, she had a 12-year-old, then a 5 and 7-year-old tucked in there in this newborn. And she never told him. He was like, wait a minute. So you have 4 kids? And spoiler alert, I still want you to watch it. But he told in his confessional that since she said that, he was just going to use it as an opportunity to have fun and say and crack. That's the term he used for have sex with her. So now I'm just going to stay here and have sex with her. And he was like the most amazing boyfriend for a part of the time they were there. He acted like he was okay with everything, but in his
That's
confessional,
crazy. Right, right.
it's wild.
Yeah.
But people will lie just because they want you to develop feelings. That's what she was saying. She didn't want him to know until he kind of liked her a little more
Right,
first. He would
right,
be
right,
accepting of her flaws.
right. Yep.
It's delusional. All right, what are we drinking? Charlena, I am having this is a peanut butter jelly time. This is peanut butter whiskey and grape Chambord, and it's
Oh
delicious.
my gosh. So you're going to be very surprised at what I'm drinking.
You were chugging it down. That's why I said we got to do these drink intros because Charlena's chugging it down.
There is no alcohol in this.
Wow.
I know. I made it, and I don't even have a juicer. It is watermelon and cucumber juice with lime and mint.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You
So
made watermelon juice?
I puree. I don't have a juicer, so I pureed it all in the blender, and then I put it through a really fine sieve. Sieve. Yeah. And it's delicious. I've got 15 pounds to lose between now and the wedding.
She doesn't even look like she weighs 20 pounds on the video.
More than I have ever in my life when I was pregnant. So anyway, that's neither here or there. Too much vacation. So that's what I'm drinking. And water. So yeah, so no more alcohol. Yeah, I'm gonna go. I'm on a mission.
Until the wedding, no alcohol?
Let me see. Where else am I going?
Are you basing it on your travel?
Look about my trips that I have planned between now and then. I've got one more to Martha's Vineyard, and then yeah, I'll be good.
She's living the fancy life. Well, here's my water. Steve, tell them what you're drinking.
What are you drinking?
I'm drinking enhanced water. So it's just water with water enhancers, sweet tea, and fruit punch.
Okay.
So I like that flavor. I like that mixture.
You blended sweet tea and fruit punch together?
Yeah, yeah. So it's like a fruity tea. That's what it's like,
Hmm. That's your own version of an Arnold Palmer, but
or
it was.
something. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Oh, well, Steve, let's get into it.
Okay.
What fascinates, there's many things that fascinate me about your story, but one thing is this connection with my good friend Doug. So
Okay.
Doug and I went to Andrews together, and Doug and Steve, I think we were all in a group together. Somebody had a Facebook.
Probably so. Yeah,
It
that's
was
what it is.
it was when the groups first took off on Facebook, and
Right.
it was the thought something about thoughts and discussing controversial things, because when Facebook first started, all people were doing was fighting. It was like finally you could get out and share your opinion on different things,
Right. But it was
and
still kind of respectful. There weren't a lot of flame wars, and we could
yeah.
actually have discussions before it,
Was it the Mellow
unraveled.
Adventist group? Was it Tim's group, the Mellow Adventist or something?
It might, I don't know. It might
It
have
was a
been
lot of
some
Adventist
variation of
Facebook
that.
people.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and there was some kind of Mellow SDA Lounge, I think it was called, or something like that. And a
yeah.
bunch of us were in that group. But anyway, Doug went through a cancer journey, and he and Steve became friends online. I don't know if you guys have ever met in person yet or not.
We did. We met when I first got here, I
Okay.
think.
Oh,
So I had my experience, and then Doug had his.
oh, yours was first.
Yes,
Okay,
mine
so
was
walk
first.
us through your diagnosis and what year was that, and what anything you want to share about the type of cancer you had or
Yeah,
anything.
I can share all that. So it was 20. I was diagnosed in October of 2016. 2016 was a hell of a year for me. So we were still in Oregon. Um, I started working with Oregon State. They were trying to establish the state of Oregon, their mental health department. They were trying to establish an advocacy program. That's my thing. I've been doing it. I was the expert. So I started with them in May of 2016. June of 2016, my mom died.
Mm.
Um, then September of 2016, um, and in retrospect, had I thought about it, I would have never taken the job with the state because I was the only black guy and the only male in the department. There were five white women. So that was, and there was no written policies. So that was just anyway. So their probation was 6 months. The fifth month in, they said they had no, they didn't need my services anymore, and that was fine because I was I was getting a pension anyway, so it didn't really make me any difference. But then October, I was diagnosed, and so I was diagnosed stage 4 lymphoma. It was called diffuse large B cell lymphoma, and it. Um, I showed you the pictures, so you saw it was in my abdomen, but it was from my um, the way they stage it is if it's above and below the abdomen, it's stage 4. So mine was above. I mean the diaphragm. Excuse me. So mine was above and below the diaphragm, um, and I had a mass on my spleen that I didn't know, and it went and there were some spots up my chest. So it had probably been there for a while. I'm thinking probably at least 2 or 3 years. It was just growing slowly. Um, but what sent me to the doctor was I started having a lot of food intolerances. I would eat like bananas and bloat, and then it went from bananas to corn, and then anything with with fructose syrup in it, anything that was corn related, I would just blow up, right? So I was taking enzymes because I'm thinking I'm getting older. Maybe just developing these intolerances as I'm getting older, and I was tired. So I said, one night I was laying on my back I had my hand on my stomach and I felt these weird they felt like cysts, and I felt 3 of them. I was like, well, maybe there's something in my abdomen that needs to be removed. So I will talk to the doctor about these cysts that I feel and also these food intolerances. And so I went that next week, and it was what was so wild about it was So I told the doctor about it. He said, well, let me examine you. So I was laying down, and as he's feeling me, I'm looking at his eyes, I'm looking at his face. And it was just a brief moment, but I saw like a little flash of fear go across his face, and I knew it was more than cysts or whatever. So he's like, he said, I'm going to send you get a biopsy of this. We need to do this right away to see what's going on. And I got the biopsy that day. I think he called it either like the next day or whatever. He said, you have lymphoma. And we're going to link you with an oncologist because you need to get this taken care of. What I didn't realize was that fatigue is the number one symptom of cancer, and I didn't know that. And I had been tired since I was like probably 53. I just thought I was slowing down because I was in my 50s. I was like, well, I was trying to lift weights and doing all this other stuff, and I was just tired. I was just running out of gas. And I was thinking, well, maybe I'm getting older. I'm taking vitamins and all this other stuff. But anyway, it wasn't helping because the cancer was just it was growing, spreading, whatever. So they linked me up with a oncologist. I had my first meeting with him like the 4th of November of that year. Had a PET scan and all this other stuff. And what he said was, he said, you don't have a lot of time because of stage 4, you don't have a lot of time to decide how you're going to treat this. So if you don't treat it immediately, you will be dead in months. I heard months, but talking to my ex, she's like, he said, I'm pretty sure he said weeks. All I know was, I said, well, we can start today. We don't have to wait, but he wanted to do, there were 4 tests that we had to do an echocardiogram, had to do a bone marrow biopsy to make sure to see if it had reached the bone, it was in my bones or not, and a couple of other things. So I started treatment November 11th.
Tell us what it feels like to get that kind of news, because we've all had these tests done for different things and we wait for the results, and you got a phone call. They didn't ask you to come back in. They told you over the phone.
Yeah.
How did you feel when you heard the news?
Well, I was like, man, this is cancer, because, and I think I told you this, I told Doug, and I told other people, because I chronicled it on Facebook. Most people don't talk about cancer. Nobody ever says anything about it. So I'm thinking cancer treatment and cancer experience from, the stuff you see on TV or 40 years ago, or whatever. I'm thinking I'm going to be emaciated and have nausea and just, it's going to be a miserable thing, And so that's what came to mind. And then the second thought, I was like, I'm too young to die. Because at the time, Jocelyn was only 3. Yeah, she was 3. I was like,
and that's your youngest daughter, right?
Yeah, that's my youngest. I was like, I got to see what's going to happen with her, and I want to see what my 2 older ones are going to do with their lives. I was like, but it scared me at first. I was like, oh my God, what will I do? And for probably about an hour, I just sat with that. I was kind of scared. I was tearful. I was like, is this the end? I was like, 56, come on now. And then it was like, I could hear my grandmother and my mom saying, you're stronger than that. You're not going, it may kill you, but you're going to fight it until it does. And so I had my moment where I was like, oh, this is the worst thing on earth. And I was like, yeah, it may kill me, but it's not going to have an easy time doing it. And then I moved from that to I might die, but cancer is not going to kill me. And that's eventually what I got to. And at that point, I was like, it's on. Let's go. Let's get it done. So it was devastating, but then I just I was like, yeah, I'm not going to let it kill me. I'm just not. It's not going to happen that way. So that's kind of how that came about. And then I also decided at that moment to go ahead and share my experience publicly, so people would, so take some of the fear out of it. That was the main thing, because like I said, nobody ever talks about it.
Mm.
So I wanted to talk about it, to take, and what's so funny about that is, in sharing it, a lot of people messaged me privately, sharing their experiences, that they had cancer, or that they were battling it too, and that my sharing was helpful in their battle. So yeah,
It's always helpful when people share, and there are just so many people who don't feel comfortable sharing things, and
right,
they sit in it alone. And I'm not here to tell people how to share. Like, not everybody's going to post it on Facebook or whatever, but
right.
tell somebody. Have people that you talk to and open up.
Yeah, because that's a lot of stress to carry that secret. And
Yeah.
I'm like, it's enough battling the cancer. I'm not going to carry the secret too. Folks don't know. You're just going to know, you know. And if you don't want to know, that's fine. But I'm still going to share it.
I think,
So
Steve, for some, and I really, before you tell us what your treatment was like before, and I want to see if Charlena has something to say, but I don't know. I don't know that I would share just because I'm a sharer, because I had a mammogram scare earlier this year, and I didn't tell a single friend of mine. But while I was waiting to go back in, I didn't tell a single friend until the very, very end. Now, a lot of my friends, Charlene included, are nurses. And I just felt like I need to stay positive, and I don't need people worrying around me like, oh no,
right.
oh gosh, or Googling whatever was going on. That just wasn't going to support me. So I didn't tell most of them until like just a couple days before I went in to get the test done, and everything was fine, thank goodness. But Charlene, you have anything you want to add so far before Steve talks
No,
about?
so I hear Steve, and while I didn't know you at the time, thank you for sharing your story and for being open and transparent, which was a gift to other people. Um, I think everybody handles things in their own way. I'm similar to you, Cara, and I've got fussed at about it by my husband. I just tend to hold on to things because I just don't want anyone to worry unnecessarily. Um, but I think there is um, a lot of positive that can come out of sharing your journey. There's people that may not have the courage or the strength to share theirs, but they can gain courage, insight, support through you sharing yours. So thank you for doing that. Thank you for sharing with us now as well. So
Yeah.
I want to hear about your treatment, and I want to, yeah, I want to hear about your treatment, but I also want us to get to the change that came about in you because of that diagnosis.
He has so much to
Well,
share.
the
Hold on one
diagnosis.
second. Hold on let me put up this comment. This is my brother from another mother, my big brother Wendell. We also went to Andrews together. He knows Doug, and he
Okay.
said,
Hey, Wendell.
"Hey, Wendell." He said finding out was the darkest day of his life, and I hope, Wendell, that there's some parts of Steve's story that helps you as well. So I do want to make sure, because we were so chatty on the front end, that you tell us about the treatment that you had, but also the transformation. You already touched on it earlier when you said you were super arrogant before. Thanks for acknowledging that. And then Wendell also said he knows he did, but he doesn't even remember telling his wife. You know,
Yeah.
Wendell had another near-death experience. He drowned. He was dead for 8 minutes, and
Oh,
Wow.
wow.
brought back to life. So a couple different brushes with death. But
Yeah.
Steve, tell us about your treatment, and which was also fascinating. And then
So a couple of things that were interesting. Um, in sharing publicly, I got a lot of messages, um, sharing with me that they were also going through it. But I also got a lot of recommendations. You know, take this. Have you tried this? Whatever. And I had to politely tell them, I'm stage 4. I don't have a lot of time to be experimenting with what might work. I don't want to die. And so since the traditional treatment of chemo or whatever has proven to work,
Yes.
that's the route I'm going. You know, people are saying black seed oil and take this and alkaline water. It's like I'm not doing it. I'm doing it. But so um, the initial consult, the oncologist said, well, you know, you have even though your lymphoma is aggressive, um, your type is treated successfully and we cure it quite often. That's what he said, right? So the first cycle of chemo was called R-CHOP, and it's 5 or 6 it's 6 infusions that are 3 weeks apart. Um, and it's a combination of chemo, some immune therapy, and some other stuff that they throw in there. It's a cocktail of stuff. So the first infusion took about 6 hours, and each successive infusion was shorter because my body was used to the process. Um, and like I said, it was 6 infusions, and they were 3 weeks apart. So, so they took a PET scan prior to the first infusion to see what they were dealing with, what was there. Because I asked him, I said, so are you all going to surgically remove these cysts or whatever? And he was
Right.
like, no, they will shrink with chemo, and they did. So after that, those first 6, then they took another PET scan to see what was left, and it was interesting because that was kind of when the rubber hit the road in terms of I was naive going in. I was thinking they would do this, I would do the R-CHOP, the 6 infusions, I would be done, things would go back to normal, right? I didn't know that. I had no clue. I spent more time actually trying to find survival rates for people who got my kind of lymphoma and how they survived. But I couldn't find anybody because that was the only thing that was wrong with me. There was no commingling issues. I didn't have diabetes, no high blood pressure. Nothing else was wrong with me health-wise other than the cancer. And most of the people who get lymphoma, the kind I had, are men over 60. And I was only 56. So I couldn't find anybody in good shape who got this and what that, you know what I'm saying? So I was like, okay, well, I'm an outlier, which also fueled the positivity because I think I was like, I'm not going to let it beat me. So that was my mindset. So, but after the R-CHOP and they took the second PET scan, there was still an oval shape. It was about, I don't know, 3 or 4 inches, maybe 4 inches long, about 2.5, 3 inches high. That was still showing that was active. And I think the way the way the specialist explained it to me was they give a numeric number to how active a spot is, and it's like 0 to 7. And so the other areas of the lymphoma, there were 14. I mean, it was like off the scale. That's how active it was. And then that little spot that was resistant to it was like a 28. So it was like concentrated. It was just like, we're not going anywhere. And so that's when I was like, oh, so it's not going to be just a walk in the park. And so the second cycle of chemo was 4 infusions, 2 weeks apart. And that was a prerequisite for me getting a stem cell transplant. So I asked the doctor, I said, well, if the second cycle is successful, do I still have to get a stem cell transplant? And he was like, yeah, because there's no guarantee that that is going to be totally successful. And it's just standard procedure that if you do the second round, you're going to have to go ahead and get the stem cell transplant. So that happened. So the first cycle was like from November to like March. The second cycle started July and lasted into August. Then the stem cell transplant happened the end of September, into October.
That
So,
was 2017, right?
huh?
This was the following year,
Yeah,
2017.
2017. Yeah.
And tell us how you were feeling during all those treatments, because
So the first, I thought, and that's why I asked. I said, "Do I need to change my diet? Whatever." He said, "No." He said, "We don't want you to lose weight." He said, "We want you to eat what you've been eating because you got to be strong enough because we're going to treat this fairly aggressively." And so he said, also, I said, "Well, will I lose weight? Will I be nauseous?" He said, "No, we got some good medicine for that." He said, "You won't even feel you." He said, "You're not. That's not going to be a problem." So basically, what they did was, the routine was that they would give me an oral steroid the day before the treatment started. That would last. I would take it that day, the day before, and then 4 days. That would keep my appetite up. And because then he said after that last dosage of steroids, you're gonna feel your energy drop off. He said,
Okay.
so basically what's gonna happen is you'll have energy, will knock you down, then we'll give you enough time to rebuild, and then we'll knock you down again. That's basically how he described it, which is basically what's happening. So I would feel really good. Then when that last dose of steroids, when it's over with, then I was like really, really weak and tired. And then it would take about 3 weeks to recover till I was ready for the next infusion, and then the cycle would repeat again. Okay, and it was funny. It was like the nurse practitioner at the time, who was also on the case, said, "Okay," he said, "you're going to feel like you have a lot of energy and you can do stuff, but do not start anything that's going to take a long time to do because the bottom will fall out and you will be sitting on the floor or whatever trying to figure out where this energy went, because that's what happened." I remember I think I was cooking I cooked a chicken broccoli rice casserole, and I was in there, I was doing my thing, whatever, and it only took about an hour, but I remember I could barely get the casserole dish out of the oven because it was like it was like there, and then boom, it was gone. And it was weird because the fatigue was really strong then. Even taking showers, if I took a real hot shower, I couldn't get out the shower. I had to take like a mild cool shower to have the energy to get out of the shower when it was over with. So the energy levels were like up and down, right? And it was funny because I was keeping Jocelyn for a while at home with me. And so I remember she loved this little program, Little Einsteins. And I forget, it had like 8 seasons and whatever. She would sit under my arm and watch these episodes, and I would sleep while she was watching whatever, because that's all the energy I had. So um, into the second round, it was more grueling, and it was like more sobering, because while the first cycle, it was like the very first infusion took 6 hours, and then it was like 4 hours, and the last one of the R-CHOP was like 3 hours. But then the second cycle was more traditional chemo, and
Mhm.
those infusions were 8 hours long, eight to
So,
nine
so is that
hours
you
long.
sitting there? Is that, and
Yes,
I never knew what it looks like in a, infusion, but now some people share their pictures. It looks like they're in a recliner, something's
right.
attached to the arm, and you're just
Right. And you can
sitting
get up and
there.
you can go to the bathroom, but you got to take all that stuff with you, right?
Mhm.
So I would get there at 8 in the morning and wouldn't leave until 5 in the afternoon.
Wow.
And that was the part was just killing. And I was glad it was only four of them, but that was the part that was really, I was like, wow. And so the other part that was kind of unnerving was, so I'm sitting here, waiting to get, waiting for them to start the IV and do all this other stuff. And so the nurses, they have on all this protective gear, right? They've got the gown on, they got the mask on, they got the gloves or whatever. And I'm thinking, what are you putting into me that you need all this stuff, and why don't I get any of this?
Charlene is laughing.
Where's
That's
my
her.
protective stuff? And they were like, yeah, and because
And this was
it was so
pre-COVID.
caustic,
So,
you know, but they're like, yeah, because if it touched you, it would, and a couple of times my veins would blow, and so they had to start it again, you know, whatever. So now if you feel any burning, let us know because you can't let. Yeah, and a couple of times that did happen. Um, so then that was the second. That was the second cycle again, about 8 weeks long or so. So then they harvested my stem cells to reinsert them. So they gave me a shot. They gave me, I had to take a shot, and my wife at the time, Anna, would give me a shot. It was every day for like 5 days, and that would stimulate my bone marrow to push out stem cells, so I could go and then they would harvest them, so they could freeze them and then put them back in. That's what happened. So we did that, and then on the 15th of September, somewhere in there, I was admitted I was still in Oregon, so I went to Portland. That's where the stem cell procedure took place. I was in Oregon, and they put in a Hickman line. You know what a Hickman line is?
little
So
Charlene.
Hickman line, it's like it's like it has these two dongles that hang outside of your body, and then there's like a tube that goes in your chest, across and down, and they tie it into a vein near your heart, so that they can pull blood and put whatever medicine they need to put in without, because my veins were shot at that point. They were just hard. I couldn't take any more. My arms couldn't take any more. So
Wow.
they did that. And when I got to that first day, I thought they were going to wait a day or so to start it. They started immediately. So I got chemo, because they killed my immune system. That's basically what they did. Every day for 6 days. And then after the 6th day, then they reinserted my stem cells. Then you had to wait another 7 to 9 days for your body to repopulate those white blood cells. So the interesting thing about that was I was on an isolation. It felt like a minimum security prison. That's what it felt like, because you can't go anywhere. You're on an isolation ward. Nobody can come in. No plants, no kids, no visitors. I mean, unless they're, you know, you can't have visitors who have colds or whatever, because everybody's immune suppressed. And so it just, I mean, you just have time. It just, you know, whatever. So one of the things that
So I have a question. So in those moments when it was just you, those quiet moments, what were some of your thoughts?
the main thought was, I'm not going to let this kill me. I will get through this. I'm not going to let it kill me. And I have my computer or whatever, you know what I'm saying, to correspond with, you know, Facebook, social media, whatever. But in those quiet moments, it was still, yeah, it's just me and death, and I'm not going to let death win. I just refuse that. Although there was one night, you know, it was weird. It felt like if I went to sleep, I would die.
Okay.
Mm.
And so I didn't go to sleep. I was like, I am not close enough. Never mind, I could die during the day, but it was just, there was something about that night that just felt weird. I was like, yeah, this is not going to happen. I'm not dying tonight. So another thing that was interesting was one infusion only took 30 minutes, but during that infusion, they wanted me to eat ice or ice cream or cold stuff for the duration of the infusion, because they didn't want the medicine to get into my mouth or my head. And they kept checking periodically to make sure that wasn't there. And I was like, what are you giving me that is that powerful that you don't want it to get any other place than that? And also they wanted me to drink a lot of water, I guess, to keep, you know, the stuff flushed out or whatever. So after the last day of the chemo, then they inserted the stem cells. It only took 15 minutes for the stem cells to be reinserted. Then about 7 days after that, the white blood cell count started going back up. Now, what was interesting is that before the stem cell procedure started, they gave us a little in-service and there were about 25 of us in there, and they were just basically explaining what was going to go on and whatever. And I remember this one guy, real jovial, whatever, making jokes. I was like, he's going to be fine. I saw him 2 weeks later into the procedure. He looked like he had aged about 20 years. So he must have had some other medical issues going on, that kept him from, that really. So the procedure really took it out of him, and some people died because I can remember they wanted us to walk the halls a lot. And I could see them cleaning rooms. I was like, okay, that person didn't make it,
Wow.
So that was kind of disconcerting, But anyway, after that, I remember my specialist kept saying that he's like, if I didn't see you, what I see in the chart doesn't look like how you're presenting. Because when I look at the chart, I'm looking at a person that should be sickly, in and out of hospital, whatever. And then I look at you, and you don't look like you have anything wrong with you. So I was like, yeah.
So you walked around. You're one of those people walking around. And no, it's like they say, you never know what a person is dealing with.
Right, exactly.
So I know. We're gonna go for another 15 minutes.
Okay.
But I want to know right away, because I wanted you to tell us about why you're still here today. I mean, that was almost 10 years ago. But I want to know, are you free next Tuesday for a part 2? Because there's too much.
Okay. So So here's the thing I was naive about. I didn't realize that post-cancer, there was a lot of monitoring afterwards. So after the treatment was over with, I had to see the oncologist every 3 months. For the first 3 years, I saw the oncologist every 3 months. Then in the 4th year, I saw them twice a year. In the 5th year, I saw them once a year. I didn't realize it would be that kind of monitoring. And then for the first 3 or 4 years post-cancer treatment, it was chronic fatigue. I couldn't do anything. If I walked a mile, it would take me a week to recover from that. And I was thinking, okay, is this my life? Is this the new normal afterwards, right? And so the other part of that, which I think that I wanted to share with you, is that cancer stripped me of all the stuff that I thought I needed, or that I thought made me me. You know what I'm saying? The muscularity, all the stuff that I was into, the weightlifting, it stripped me of all that stuff. And I remember my cousin saying, the essence of you is what people like. They never liked all that other stuff. But you were so caught up with the other stuff, you're thinking that all these other things were what people were attracted to you for. It wasn't. It was your essence, And that was the part when I didn't have that stuff, that armor that I had put on myself. Who was I? You see what I'm saying? And so at that point, everything changed. I realized it was
Steve, did you feel that you were connected to that person, to you?
I didn't know who I was until after the cancer. You see what I'm saying? It was after I was stripped away, and it was like the physical shedding of all that stuff led to a psychological personality shedding of all the stuff that I didn't need. You see what I'm saying? All the stuff that I didn't need to show off, to show how much I knew and show, you know what I'm saying? I didn't have to be witty. All those things were lost in the cancer experience. And so going forward is a completely different, a completely different person in that regard. Yeah, there's some still stuff. I mean, I'm not stupid or anything like that, but I don't have to, a lot of stuff that I was doing for show, you know what I'm saying, to prove a point, or to whatever, to show I'm one of the smartest people in the room, or one of the biggest people in the room, whatever. I didn't have to do that anymore. And I think that's what the cancer stripped away.
And you know what, Steve? I can totally feel that in your energy. But when we were, one of the reasons why I was so drawn to you on social media is because you're just hella smart. Like he's an intellectual all the way. Charlena, all the way. Let me put up Wendell's comments here. He said, you don't know how mentally strong you are until you complete a series of treatments for cancer. And Wendell had prostate cancer, and he also shared it a lot on social media. I remember Wendell, he had there was a puzzle that the guys would work on every time they were in the waiting room or something like
Right.
that. I don't know if it was for treatments or whatever. And he would add pieces to the puzzle every time he was there for a visit.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really very, very moving. And then also Wendell, you might as well be friends with Wendell too. You're already in with Doug, but Wendell said he felt he still feels disconnected after he stopped bodybuilding because Wendell was really big into weightlifting and stuff too.
Yeah. But I realized, post cancer, and I've gone back to the gym. My body, that was the other thing that was interesting. Probably five years into remission, my body started responding to weight training again. And I asked my oncologist about it, the oncologist here, primarily because right after when I was seeing him, I would lift weights and nothing would happen. My body wouldn't respond, no pump, no anything like that. And he said, well, Steve, you had a very aggressive cancer. We treat it very aggressively. Your body may not respond the way it once did. He said, so this might be your new normal. But 5 years in, 5.5 years afterwards, I started doing push-ups and my body started responding again. And so I asked him about it. He said, well, in some cases, after a period of remission, it's almost like your body reboots and you do regain some of that. Now, I have to say that the fatigue stuff is there, but it just takes longer for me to get there now. Whereas before, it might be a walk. Now I would do cardio. At one point, I was doing on treadmill an hour and a half before, every other day or whatever, and be fine. But now I realize it just takes longer for me to get to that wall of fatigue than it did when, right after treatment. So yeah.
Let me tell you, 5.5 years to get your full strength back. I just think about somebody like me who has to constantly repeat, don't be anxious for nothing. The level of how did you get through this without falling into depression? Because the reason why I said we have to have a part 2 is because I know that during the time of the cancer is when your marriage also ended. And so I just feel like most people will go into complete depression, having
Right.
cancer, the marriage is ending. How did you not, just sit around and feel sorry for yourself?
Well, here's the thing. So cancer is life or death, right? And I developed what I said to myself, if it's not life or death, I'm not going to worry about it. If it's not life or death, it's not going to stress me out. So I would much rather be alive and talk about my fatigue or whatever than not be alive. You see what I'm saying? And if this is my new normal, then this is my new normal. That's the way it is. I'll work around it. And the other part of it is I'm hard-headed. So periodically I would still try to exercise to see, I would push. I'm going to push my body. You're going to do something. I'm not going to become a vegetable. I'm not going to just lay here. I'm going to do something. It might take me a while. And so all those years, I wasn't active like I was, like I am now or even pre-cancer, but I did some things and a lot of reading. But yeah, I didn't, and I guess my other thing is my baseline is kind of melancholy anyway. So it didn't really bother me that I couldn't do whatever. It was still a time of self-discovery and understanding what it was, who I was at my core, and understanding that my physical attributes or my physical abilities were not the main thing. That I could still have my essence and share that and not have that other part. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
I'm just fascinated at your mindset. I don't know what you're thinking, Charlene. I guess we might imagine what we would do or how we would feel if we got some unexpected diagnosis. But Steve, it just feels like you were able to pivot and pull from something. Because another thing we don't have time to get into today is that you're not not only are you not SDA anymore, but would you consider yourself to be agnostic or atheist?
Probably a mixture of all of that. I don't know.
Basically, it's I'm not
Because here's the thing. I know that weird things happen that you can't explain. And so I don't try to explain it. Some people say, well, that's God. Okay, maybe. I don't know. I don't know what it is. But I don't waste my time. And that's what people, I remember somebody said, well, you're not giving God enough credit for healing you from your cancer. I said, so this is the same God who could have kept me from getting cancer. And so I'm supposed to now thank him for healing me from cancer. Help me understand how that makes sense.
That's an interesting way to.
And a lot of people didn't say anything about that. They had nothing to say. So my thing is,
so funny because what I would
worry about that. My thing is, if there's a God, he's going to do what he's going to do. I have strength to live, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to live.
I see, but I'm at a place now where I feel like it's none of anybody's business whether you give God credit or what you do or how you choose to do it. It's no, and that is my biggest issue with Christianity is the business minding, the license to go and mind other people's business. I just don't want to be associated with that at all anymore. And they clothe it in righteousness, like don't get us started.
Right. It's like, how do you think about it when you step back from it? You say, why are adults trying to tell other adults how to live? Because that's what it basically boils down to.
If you're not doing it my way, you're wrong. And I'm going to use fear to scare you that the end is coming and you're calling an election is not sure. You are not in the ark of safety and all those other things that we can talk about. I know, Charlita, we have to chuckle because I feel like when you get more separated from it,
the further you get away from it, when you look back at it, you're like, okay, that was some craziness.
Right, when you move past the fear, because it's fear that keeps you. Right. I'm not saying anybody listening to this needs to leave their church or whatever. It's a very individual thing. But I made a decision that I no longer was going to be in anything that was led by fear. You know, anything that was fear-based.
Same here.
Because and
that happened to me long before I got cancer. I was probably in my late 30s when I realized, this is not working for me. It's just not.
Well, Steve, when Carl was asking you to define yourself, I think that you are in a space that's beyond definition. It's just it's what you are and what works for you. I mean that's what it is. It's not a label. Whatever your spiritual constitution is, it's yours without a label. That's what it is.
Yeah. And I pull from, and I tease people, I say, well, I'm a cultural Adventist, because there's a lot of stuff that I pulled from, it made me who I was. You know what I'm saying? And so
we don't regret it.
Yeah, not at all.
I like gospel music, even though the theology is crazy. I listen to it sometimes. And also that whole thing of, I look at the Beatitudes, you know what I'm saying, in terms of going the extra mile with people and not harming folks. And see, I do all that stuff. It's been incorporated in my life, but I'm not going to church over that.
I'll take a big Frank over a real hot dog.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So, and that's what there's like. And somebody asked me, he said, well, what's the difference between a real Adventist and a cultural Adventist? I said, well, if you ever go to like a alumni weekend or a convention or whatever, so there are going to be some people who are inside listening to the sermon. Those are the Adventists. So the other folks who are just hanging out outside talking, those are the cultural Adventists. I said, that's how you're going to know. So, yeah.
Wow. Well, listen, we're going to need to wrap it up tonight, but are you willing to come back, Steve? Because there's so many directions we need to go in on this. And I think
we can do it next Tuesday. I mean, whenever I'm free. So let's do it. I'm
so jealous. I want to be like you when I grow up. I want to be retired and have a more open scale. I want some freedom.
Yeah.
Listen, it is July 1st, 29 months.
She has 29 months left.
Way to go.
Yes. Cannot wait.
Wow. And Steve, how long have you been here in Atlanta?
I've been here since 2018.
You've been in Atlanta since 2018?
Yes. We were still estranged when I got here.
Oh, okay. 'Cause
We
I
had not reconnected
You
yet.
guys were still
Yeah, we had not
separated.
reconnected yet.
Wow. Well, Charlena, don't be jealous, but Steve and I are actually never ever met in person. Next Tuesday, we're going to breakfast.
Monday.
Monday. See?
It's on the 7th. I got it. I created a reminder,
Oh.
so I know it's Monday.
Yes. Okay. I need to make sure my my work calendar is blocked too. I'm really looking forward to that.
So
Uh,
yeah.
Heidi. Oh, excuse me.
yeah. So when we pick things up, I would love to hear more about the impact that this had on your relationships with the people in your life. Because we hit a trial, that's when we learn a lot about people.
Well, actually, um, yeah, we can start with how it changed my understanding of myself. And
Mhm.
once it changed my understanding of myself, then I realized how it would impact all of these other relationships. Because
Mm.
I got once, this will be the tease for the next time. Once I understood who I was, I realized as much as I love my kids, and I do love my kids, I shouldn't have gotten married ever. There was just too much stuff I had to work on, and by the time it would probably take me the rest of my life to get stuff straight, to be to be in a good place, to be in a relationship. And I love my kids, and if we could have them without doing it other, then I would have done that. But I didn't know that. You don't know what you don't know. And let me say this: for so long, I thought that my dysfunction was normal, so there was no reason for me to investigate and review that because I thought it was normal. And it
Mm.
wasn't until like I said, the physical stripping away of all that other stuff helped me to see now all of the warped dysfunctional stuff of myself. That once I saw it, I was like, oh yeah, okay,
But
yeah.
did the dysfunctional part of yourself, did it manifest itself in any other way in your life that would allow you to identify that no,
No,
this isn't?
no, because well, the only way it did, the only clue that you would have had was I made the kids priority more so than I did my spouse.
Okay.
Wow. Well, he's going to unpack all of that for us
Okay,
next
yeah.
week.
We'll
And
do
Yeah.
that.
we've
Next.
got a lot of directions to go because Charlena,
Mhm.
Steve, and I had our own little chat, and you're really going to enjoy kind of his different perspective on relationships now versus before, and some of it kind of mirrors my own interests. So it's going to be a really good time, and I want to make sure that we come back together next Tuesday at 7. That next Tuesday, I have a little more time to go over if we
Okay.
need to, because I would listen, Steve. Charlene and I have been craving some testosterone to be on the platform with us because we're just sitting up here talking about our ideas and things like that. But we need a man to come in and say,
Okay, we can do
that,
this.
you
Yeah,
know, honey,
I'll be free. It's not
you
a
know,
problem. Yeah.
yeah, we need somebody to tell us the real and maybe decipher some of this because I feel like I know men are headlines and women color in every in between, and so we can weave some crazy things. We together. We
Yeah.
need some balance.
Anytime. So yeah, not a problem. Not a problem.
Okay, wonderful. So, any closing? Oh, tell us, Steve, in closing, when were you diagnosed cancer free?
So it took me a while to even say that cancer-free thing. It was December of 2017 when they did a PET scan and it was all the levels were low. And so he was like, he said, no evidence of the disease and you're in remission now. And it
Wow.
took me another couple of years. I was talking to Nadine Kelly, Elder Kelly's daughter, who's also a cancer survivor. She was like, say you're cancer free. And so eventually I was able to say after several years, I was cancer free. Yeah.
Mm. Well, I love that, Steve. I'm thankful. I don't want to log in online and get the sad news of somebody passing. So I'm
And
just
that's
always,
the part you hate, man. When you log in, you see that.
yeah.
Yeah. So
So I'm very thankful you're still here. I can't wait to see you in person for the first time on Monday.
yes.
And Charlena, you want to say anything in closing as we go?
Just thank you. Thank you for coming. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah,
I'm
it's not.
excited about next week. I'm excited. I think there'll be, I was just really soaking it in. I think next week there'll be a little more for me to really interject. I think
Yeah,
be
that's
a little
fine.
more dialogue, but thank you. I
Yeah, yeah.
received it.
Anytime, anytime.
The three of us could talk for hours. I just want to
Yeah,
warn you
and I
guys.
don't mind. Yeah, let's do that. So, yeah.
Okay, well, thanks you guys, and thanks
Okay.
everybody for tuning in. Make sure you share this episode. So encouraging, and you're definitely going to want to come back next week for part 2. Go into a little bit of hot topics. It's going to be a great conversation.
Okay.
7 p.m. next Tuesday night, right here on Facebook and YouTube. Make sure you're subscribed to my YouTube channel if you haven't done so already, and share it.
Okay.
Thanks, y'all.
All
Good
right
night.
then. We'll see you. Bye
Bye.
bye.